Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special thoughts only episode of the Media Boat podcast. I've been gone for 2 weeks, well, for a week, but haven't talked about my thoughts in 2 weeks because I just consumed so much media that there's no way for us to keep it within a reasonable time in a normal podcast. As you'll see, you see the timeline right there, how long this is actually going to be. So, without wasting any time, my name's Mike. Not with me is Matt, because I will be doing all the talking. So, if you love the sound of my voice, or if you love the sound of my thoughts, or if you just want to hang out with me for the next time period here, this episode is for you. This is, of course, the half episode because it's a half step towards 500 episodes. So we'll get started here with the first of 8 different chapters. Yeah, I talk about 8 different media for TV and for movies. Like I said, I consumed a lot, so just give you a heads up of what is happening here. So we are going to start with a show I already talked about prior, Building the Band. So when I first talked about this, they were still in the pod, they were still building their teams, and then they got to perform live in front of a studio audience. Now, while the audience did get to voice their opinion on who they thought would be better to move on, it was ultimately the judges' decision. The judges being listed here: Liam Payne, AJ McLean, Nicole Scherzinger, and Michelle from Survivor, no doubt, TLC. Why am I forgetting Destiny's Child here? But anyways, they're the ones who actually get to decide who gets to move on and who they think hasn't bonded well, who hasn't gelled well enough together for in order to make it forward in the competition. So the competition itself, they got to choose from specific songs, as you do typical singing competitions. It does have that kind of unique flavor of the bands building themselves together and then living together, a la other Netflix show, um, with the giant wall in front of it. Uh, blind Marriage by Sight. Why am I forgetting one of my favorite shows of all time? Love is Blind, because Love is Blind. So they use that concept of Love is Blind where you don't see the band, and then the band build together based on their voices and who they think they'd want to mesh well together with. If you don't get enough likes, you are then booted from the competition. If you don't form one of the 6 bands, you are then ultimately booted because not enough bands to go around and form teams. Then they get into the typical come together phase. They got to live together. They got to perform together. Lots of drama happening within these different teams. So that's always fun to see. But ultimately, it just feels like a very okay show. There's not a whole lot going for it in terms of beyond this, because ultimately, much like with The Voice, if the singers themselves don't go out and then perform very well in real life, don't go out and chart in real life, then you're just not going to see or hear them much in the like everyday sphere outside of the competition. And that's where I feel like we're at here. Yes, the bands that were created were amazing. Yes, I think who won ultimately did deserve to win because they're the ones who built themselves up the most over the course of the season. However, I don't see or hear them that much in the media space right now. So ultimately, I think this might be kind of a failed experiment. While I think the experiment itself, in terms of being able to create a band based on voice only, did work and ultimately did create a very fun atmosphere. It ultimately felt lacking in the overall success beyond it. That being said, The Voice, which I reference here, is still going on. They're still making seasons, even though maybe one or two of those performers who end up winning The Voice go on to actually do something with their career. So it's kind of like a give and take in terms of like actual success beyond a competition type show. So for me, building the band, while interesting within its first couple episodes, definitely feels like just a generic run-of-the-mill singing competition once they get out of those initial pods and then build their bands. Like the first performances, great. But as we go on, I just felt less and less connected to wanting to see either of these perform well. Not that like I didn't like dislike the bands, I just disliked the format that it didn't try to keep doing something new to keep me engaged. So yeah, that's building the band. I'm gonna assume it's gonna get a second season, although Liam Payne is no longer with us, so he will not be returning for a season two. Um, that being said, if they decide to leave it at that, this I think would be technically his last appearance in a like, well, in a competition setting, but like a television appearance. So interesting to see if they do decide to bring this back or not. I'm not leaning heavily into it that they would, but that's not for me to decide. I mean, I did watch it, so I guess I did decide that yes, I liked it enough that I did get my views and attention. All right. Moving on to the next show is another show I also talked about. Destination X, or Destination Cross, as I like to say here. Hosted by one Jeffrey Dean Morgan, formerly of The Walking Dead fame, where they kind of take a play on the Amazing Race esque, but not quite because the teams aren't racing against each other. They're instead trapped and isolated on a bus that's moving towards the destination, and they have to kind of guess where they're at while the windows on the bus are sealed off, and they're only able to see what's outside the bus when they depart, goggles on, where they can't see, and all of a sudden they're in the middle of the competition, which is a fun experiment to do, and I think it's got potential. I just wish the clues and the challenges were a bit more involved because they seemed because the thing that we like about the Racing that I like about the Racing Race is that the competition teams are going up against each other, uh, but they're also at least for four different challenges in each episode. You get your detour, your roadblock, your pit stop at the very end, and usually one or two other challenges thrown in the mix there. Here with Destination X, they do two challenges and that's it. One individual and one team. The teams are predetermined, so you can't really decide like who they want to team up, even though they have like alliances. Every now and then they let them team up to kind of split them up, but most of the time it's oh, you guys are a team, you guys are a team, you guys are a team. And I didn't really feel like they were purposely choosing this, that it was chosen for them. A lot of the show doesn't really hinge on Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character in this. Well, he plays himself, not really a character, but his persona of being like this rich, savvy, like billionaire who's going to like take these people like all around the world, or it's say around the world, but really it's just through Europe because they got to drive there and they got a location there. So it did, even though it was supposed to feel like this big global adventure, it was really self-contained, really within Europe, and then even though they're so really within the specific like big name cities. Like spoilers slash no spoilers, they went to Rome, they went to Paris, they went to Monte Carlo. Like your big names within the European sphere. And then at the end, they end up in London. Like you can't get any more like iconic than that. So to say like where you are in Destination X, like yes, at the end they're like supposed to like geoguesser and trying to guess where they are on the map. And the further you are, then you get eliminated. But the one thing that irked me is that there was one time where everyone placed their X exactly on the map. So in order to have a tiebreaker, they created this very unique game or tiebreaker, where you had to say what year the castle was made. Whoever got the closest to that year got to automatically eliminate one of the players. Instead of it being, well, whoever was not closest was eliminated, it was whoever got the closest got to eliminate someone else. I did not like that because it purposely took out one of the strongest players in the competition. And that was the only way they could have gotten them out because they were that good. Granted, the person who kicked them out knew they were that good. And had they not kicked them out, they probably would have won. But that tiebreaker really, really irked me the wrong way. Also, Bachelor's Peter showed up like 3 episodes in as a like surprise player, and he made it to the finale. And I also didn't like that because this is supposed to be a game or game show for everyday people, or like everyday contestants. They seem like everyday people. And to have someone who has been on other reality competition series like Peter to be then in the show and then to kind of pick off one by one the different people felt like the producers were forcing their hand instead of being like, okay, you're going to be on here for a couple episodes and then we're purposely going to eliminate you uh just because we can't have you winning. But no, because he got to the finale, he had a shot of winning. And I didn't like that because he skipped like the first 2 or 3 challenges, 3 episodes. And it felt like they needed to like invigorate this somehow by putting in some familiar faces. Really, really did not like that. If you're gonna do something like that where it's a celebrity competition, which I could see this doing, Celebrity Destination X, who have celebrities who have been all around the world, especially musicians who have traveled and performed all around the world. I could see a spinoff like that happening with this. I could also see Destination X being in more like a uh Asian setting, China, Milan, through China, through Hong Kong, through Thailand. Uh, but I think you could get a little confused because more people, like more famous landmarks that they use, can have a better familiarity in the European setting rather than in the Eastern Asian market. Would be interesting to see if they try to do a US version with the different um, landmarks and geography. They could go through Canada, they could go through Mexico. I understand why they did Europe. I think it's because it is the more exotic location for a US based audience. Like you don't want to see an audience just going to Palm Springs and like stopping on bar stuff to see the giant thermometer, or like going like, oh, you guys are in South Dakota for Mount Rushmore, and all the clues are pointing to that because the four heads or whatever. That's one thing that I did like about the show is that the different clues kind of made me like play along and try and guess where they were. Some of them were very obvious, others were not as obvious. Uh, but I think that's one of the aspects that can be improved upon in this show is the clues given to the audience and then to the player. So you're like, oh, well, that was obvious, but sometimes, especially towards the end, it wasn't too obvious. Like there was one where all the players were stumped and they didn't even pick the right country. So it's got its hit, it's got its misses. I think I'll at least give a second season, but like I said, I hope they change destinations or locations. Moving on to another show, speaking of new locations and destinations, Twisted Metal Season 2. It's out, it's here, and they're jumping right into a tournament style. Twisted Metal, currently on Peacock. I enjoyed season 1 because of how tongue in cheek it was. Very comedic, very goofy. It's very much has that same tone of we know all of this is crazy, but at the same time, we're just gonna see how much more crazy we can make this. And that's kind of like my appealing charm to this. Beyond just my kind of like nostalgia for the video games themselves. I think they used a lot of video game references within the first season. Season 2 is focused more on like the different player characters that you could play as throughout the Twisted Metal series. But it still keeps that kind of fun, goofy, this is kind of chaotic life that the Twisted Metal world is kind of born into. It It's got a fun tournament attached to it, which I'm excited to see. The first 3 episodes are currently up on Peacock. I probably won't be talking about this when it gets to the end and wraps up, just because if you like the first season, there's a lot to like in the second season. If you're just turned off by the whole concept of the Twisted Metal in the first season, there's no reason for you to dive in and enjoy the second season of Twisted Metal. But I do like how they keep referencing all this 90s nostalgia. For instance, in the opening, they talk about the Babysitters Club and it being invested in the Babysitters Club books. And try to figure out, and then like, oh no, there's a missing book. Where is it? So it's a very fun plot point that kind of helps drive the narrative and kind of helps drive the overall absurdity that is this world, where as absurd as crazy as that there's these walled off cities and these and just like vehicular mayhem occurring outside of them, there's nothing quite like having Anthony Mackie explain to someone why why a book character from Babysitter's Club is important and why he cares so much beyond just the absolute absurdity that, like, yes, it's gonna be absurd. Yes, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be wild, and they're all in on it. And I'm quite happy that it's returned. I think kind of like one of my guilty pleasure shows. Now that I keep thinking about it, it's just because it's goofy, it's funny, it's a bit absurd, but also like Anthony Mackie and Stephanie Beatriz have so much like good chemistry together that I like to see them bicker. I'd like to see them fight and just overall just be this kind of like angry couple at each other just because the whole world is so insane. And they're a little bit insane too, don't get me wrong, but they just add to that absurdity. And it's very, very fun to watch. At least I find it fun to watch. Your mileage will vary, pun intended, on Twisted Metal. Now, show I'm very happy to talk about and that I alluded to on last episode is Apple TV's Stick. I had hoped Matt was going to finish Stick before we recorded our previous podcast. I had hoped we would have time to have talked about it, but he didn't finish. He didn't decide to binge it over 3 days and get through all 10 episodes because, yeah, it's kind of that good. Uh, it's one of those shows following in the footsteps of Ted Lasso, of Shrinking, where it's a kind of a group of misfit people brought together over a common goal to eventually help each other. Owen Wilson plays a former golfer who had a terrible meltdown on the course and then kind of just disappeared from the limelight, uh, only to then stumble across a kid with a killer drive, a la Happy Gilmore, who just knocks out of the park consistently and has accuracy consistently and has won tournaments as a teen consistently and takes him under his wing to coach him and get him through to the U.S. amateurs towards a goal of reaching the PGA. There's a lot of fun interactions in here along the way because it does set itself up as a road trip style show where they're in an RV. So it forces those close encounters, those close spaces. It forces the characters to mix and mingle together and not be like, well, I'm just here because you're here because they're here. So we have to mingle. The fact that they force them into an RV means, oh, we have to talk to each other because there's no one else around. We're forced to interact with each other. And that helps build the drama, helps build the tension, helps build the dynamic between all these characters. And that's the one thing I like about this show is that as much as it is about golf, it's a lot more about the characters. Just like as much as Ted Lasso is about football, it's a lot more about the characters. Just like with Shrinking, as much as it is about being a therapist, it's also about the characters and their interaction and them coming together. So there's a lot going with Stick that just makes you feel happy and good. And the fact that even towards the end, they got actual PGA players to join in to this to the show. Specifically Colin Morikawa, who won the US Open a couple of years ago when he was young. So it's kind of like a mirror image there. there's a lot that I like about stick in terms of like the golfing, but there's one thing about it I did not like, and that is that as much as a powerful drive can get you far in a course, it's your short game, it's your chipping and your putting that can really seal it for you in doing well in golf. As someone who plays casual golf, not that competitive, I'm still pretty much a bogey golfer, but if I could play even par, oh, that'd be fun. But also the game would go a lot quicker. I won't get enough shots in. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that while they set up that, yes, this kid has a really, really great driver who can punch it 320 yards, there's still usually 150, 120 to get to. It kind of does a quick turn on it by saying, like, oh, like watch him hit this 120-yard shot and just nail it. Like he can't do a short game, he can't do a long game, but they never like fully show a full length like hole or course. It always like jumps and cuts. And while he does look good as a golfer, a lot of those shots do look very much CG because it kind of has to be in order to get the perfect shots and the perfect tension growing for it. Uh, a lot of what I'm like, what Mark Maron kind of surprised me in this. I liked how his dynamic uh, with Owen Wilson is in this. That being said, it feels like the pilot has about three different starts to it. First one, where we see Owen Wilson in his current state. Second one, where we see Owen Wilson meeting the kid and he explains himself who he is. And the third, when we introduce Owen Wilson and Mark Maron's character in a bar as they're hustling other kind of like drunk golfers into a bet. It's feels like that pilot is trying to start at three different places, or they had three different starting points and just kept mixing around in the editing room, trying to figure out where they wanted to land with it. Because if you start off with Owen Wilson in the bar hustling, you think, oh, he's just a jerk. But if you start him in the house and he's kind of losing it, then you're like, oh, he's kind of sympathetic. Or if you start him like on the golf course with meeting the kid, they're like, oh, he's kind of advantageous. He's kind of like trying to use this kid. So because it's like three different starting points for this in the pilot, it just feels like you're getting three different layers of Owen Wilson in this role, which is good. Ability to show actors range in a show like this. But the editing and making sure you know that yes, you can like Owen Wilson. Yes, he's doing this for selfish gains, and yes, he may be a little bit of an asshole right now. But all those three different turns have their story pay off towards the end. And that's kind of what's I really like about Sick is that everyone's got a good payoff towards the end. Everyone comes together for each other. It's a very, very fun show. It's 10 episodes. They're all like 35 minutes long. So it runs fast. You can binge this over the weekend. Like I said, I did it in 3 days. And you'll have fun by the end. There are like caveats are just as I can't even say like a casual golfer. I only golf like 3 or 4 times a year. As someone who has played golf, a lot of what this show does in terms of golfing itself can be good and can be kind of, well, we're going to shortcut it here. Well, we need this to happen, so we like need to force an error here. We need to force a win here. And so it seems like the golfing aspect kind of drives the story a bit too much in order to get the specific emotions and reactions out of the characters. And I know what it just described was plot conveniences, but it just feels like they dive too heavy into these plot conveniences instead of what like a normal conversation or person would do. But I think I had fun with it. I don't know if I'll see this on my top five list just because there's so much good stuff out this year. Uh, that being said, I could kind of see it making it at towards the end, maybe on number five, maybe a four. Not my top show so far this year, but definitely up there. It's definitely a good fun feeling, and I kind of want to see it, unintended, stick around. All right. Well, now that I've warmed up through television and got through all four of the shows, let's go right into the other golf thing that I watched. Yep, I'm talking about Happy Gilmore 2, the sequel. He's back and he's drunk. Well, yes, drunk, abandoned. If Owen Wilson's character of being a kind of like a down on his luck out of the PGA Tour, well, Happy Gilmore 2 takes this exact same swing and goes in a wildly different direction because Happy Gilmore 2 also starts off as a drunkard, a uh, kind of caring for his family of 5 kids, but you don't have to worry about 4 of them. You don't have to worry about the 5th one, which feels really weird to me. Because you're saying like, oh, you 4 boys, you're fine. I don't need to worry about you. You're chaotic. But you 5th child, you little girl, my little princess, I got to do everything I can for you to make your life better. But those 4 boys, they can be wild, they can be feral, they can be whatever they want. But my princess, she's got to go to ballet school. She's really good. I want to give her the best. But not my 4 boys. They can fend for themselves. Feels doesn't feel quite right to me. It just misses the mark, especially on a parenting aspect. But that is what gets Happy Gilmore back into playing on the PGA. Uh, see, and it goes through one of the worst montages I've seen, and that is Happy Gilmore playing on a municipal golf course and drinking everywhere and just flat out like doesn't have it until the very end. But overall, it's just a very casual showing of how bad he is. And that's okay. He hasn't played in, I think it said like 15 years. And that's okay. Like, you can't be bad. You can't start off as bad. But to kind of like beat over the head about it, that's one thing that Happy Gilmore never did, is that it beat you over the head on how bad he was. He was a good driver, but he never, like, also kind of had a good short game in order to like win the tournament, especially that first tournament that he entered. Uh, it's Gilmore too kind of wants to play into that trope again, but then also wants to subvert its own expectations by showing like how terrible he is. But as soon as he like finds a swing again, doesn't matter how bad he was, he's all of a sudden a really good golfer and he can play again, just like with the best of them. uh he easily like joins the, I guess it was like the Masters tournament dinner because he won. That's the other thing. They kind of retcon that he is such a good golfer that he won 7 tournaments over the course of his career, playing through Tiger and Jack and Tony and Shoffley and like all these other Rory and all these other good players that like he was able to win, but now he's like the old timer compared to like these new guys. But even so, like it's like, oh, like the story itself is like trying to say, oh, like you can be good, you can be bad, and you can have a comeback. And that's kind of what's going on here. Except I don't believe the comeback story here. I don't believe him making it to the final round and being that good. I don't see him being one of the top golfers after not golfing for years on end. No matter how good your drive is, no matter how good you can play, you're just to beat the best golfers in the world, the top 4 of Rory, Shoffley, Bryson, uh, and not Tony, but uh, Mickey. Uh, to like be one of those top 5 golfers after like coming off the couch is very, very improbable. And just, I do not buy it 1 second. That being said, am I supposed to buy it? Because it's supposed to be a comedy. It's supposed to be Happy Gilmore. You're supposed to have a fond, like loving memory of him. But that being said, it does dive way too much into that nostalgia well. You have like half the time I was playing, who's that cameo? What's that person? Who are you? I've seen you somewhere. Oh, it's that comedian. Oh, they're in this. Oh, I can't. Oh, they got you too. And it got very, very, very distracting. Most distracting was Bad Bunny. A lot of people saying like, "Oh, like he's so great in this. He should do acting. Like, like he should be everywhere." But he just kept like he playing a one note character here over and over and over again. I didn't quite like it that he was in there that much. I felt like every time he appeared on screen, it was very much con- a continuous nuisance in trying to propel the story. Which, by the way, this thing should have been a series. This thing should have been a Netflix series of 10 episodes because there's so many like hard chapter breaks in this thing that feels like, okay, we're going to end here, full stop. And then they got to pick up again. And they always go full stop. And then they got to pick up again. And then full stop. Uh, it's like they purposely chunked it up into or what was cut up supposed to be like a series and then smushed together to this 2 hour film. There's definitely areas where it's like, oh, I guess we're doing this now. Oh, I guess that's happening now. Oh, I guess we're just following along for the ride. Whereas at least with the original Happy Gilmore, there was an actual like progression where the event before triggered the next event after. Here, it just feels like hard stop. Now I got to do something else to help re-enter the story. It's it's clunky. It feels a bit long. It feels a bit contrived. I didn't enjoy my time here. I also did not see anything that would kind of trigger a repeat viewing, but also anything quotable. That's one thing that we like about Happy Gilmore is that it's a very, very quotable movie. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast. Jackass. Shooter McGavin as a character. It's a very, very lovable and quotable movie. But Happy Gilmore 2 plays too much on those quotable moments from Happy Gilmore 1 and recycles them. And we've seen this before in films and media that tries to come back after 30 years, after 20 years, because they want to play on that nostalgia. Well, but then they don't do anything new with it. They don't do anything special with it. It's I don't want to say it's a missed opportunity because that's kind of why you bring people in, is to have that feeling of nostalgia in it. But as I've said before, you have nostalgia, that's great. But the original piece of media is not going away. There's little to no reason why this film should exist, except that big, huge one, Netflix and Adam Sandler love to make movies together because they get a lot of views and Adam Sandler likes to bring on all his friends. Two, it's a return to a character, something that people have been missing. And doing something like this will allow him to do probably a dramedy in the near future. And three, it's just a way for him to have fun with his friends, have fun with the people around him. Adam Sandler's at the point of his career where he makes movies with people he wants to make movies with. He doesn't necessarily want to do a Happy Gilmore 2. It feels like it, but at the same time, he wants to be around his friends. He wants to be buddies with the professional golfers. He wants to be buddies with Travis Kelce because he's in here for some reason. He wants to be buddies with Bad Bunny because he's in here for some reason. He wants to be buddies with a lot of people, and everyone seems like people heard like, oh, Happy Gilmore 2 is happening. Get me in there. I want to be a part of it. Let me be a part of Happy Gilmore. I love Happy Gilmore. Without like ever reading the script, it's just be like thrown in there. It's all just thrown in parts. Like Eminem's in here for no goddamn reason other than to throw a nostalgia factor on it. It's a waste of space. But that being said, I know people are going to watch this. I know people are going to say, I don't care. I'm in it for the nostalgia. I'm in it for the bait. I'm in it just to have a dumb last stick time. And that's what it is. It's a dumb last stick time. It doesn't try to do anything more or less. It just wants to be itself and tries to be a story about family. But if that was the case, it could have done that ending a lot differently. Because instead of just having Gilmore and Bad Bunny on the very end course, They could have had all the kids run out and given them a purpose to help do something, but they didn't. Yeah, they could have just done is simple, like everyone comes out and you like family help themselves, and then everyone from the stands like we're all your family happy. Like you got family here. You're not alone. And he's like, yes, I'm not alone. And he makes the plan and wins. That could be a better, albeit sappier, ending. But you're already so far off the rails at that point with this whole like live golf-esque tournament that they're in that you're probably like way past the point where that is an acceptable ending. But yeah, did not like the ending, did not care for this thing at all. I don't see myself ever going back to Happy Gilmore 2. It's one of those things that just exists out there, and then people will be like, oh yeah, that did happen. All right. I think I talked about that thing to death. Speaking of to death, Death of a Unicorn, currently out on on HBO Max. Uh, it's, I don't know how to put this. It's fine up to a point. Uh, I'm not sure how to put Death of a Unicorn because it's got a very much A24 look and feel, but takes this unicorn into a kind of campy horror setting where, oh yeah, why can't unicorns be these violent creatures? They can be mystical, but they can also be violent because they got a giant horn on their head. So it plays into that, also plays into some kind of classic unicorn blood is like the magic healing unicorn horns is like the magic healing power. Unicorns can like magically heal people. And it's like, oh yeah, the cure for cancer. Oh, the cure for blindness. Oh, the cure for everything. Unicorns can cure everything. And I'll be all. But then like it skews way hard into the horror aspect of it, where the hunter becomes the prey and the unicorns are just on a murderous rampage. And it's up to Jenna Ortega's character to piece together all about the lore of the unicorns and why you should save them and how to be friends with them and how to not get them like to be these murderous rampaging horses that they know or that they've come across. It's a fine time. I had fun watching it. I liked all the characters in this. I think it's a fine time to watch. I think it's a one time only watch. I think it does kind of go a bit too hard into the campy horror aspect, especially with the different deaths throughout the movie. I think that if they're trying to play up the kind of the shock factor of it, you're doing a hard time competing against something like uh, Final Destination, Bloodlines, which also came out same year. It's a hard sell on like how good it is because I think the script's good. I think I liked what they were doing with it. I think I liked the aspect it was going. I liked the direction it was going. But just overall, as a concept, the total is not the sum of its parts. Part of it is good, part of it I liked, but the whole sum of it just kind of falls a bit flat for me. It doesn't do me well for a second viewing. That's one thing that I do like in movies is when it wants me to do a second viewing. That's one of the reasons why in my end of the year rankings, one of my top requirements is would I watch this movie again? And unfortunately, I would not watch Death of a Unicorn again. Whether it's on the Death of a Unicorn or whether it's just on me just not being in the right headspace to watch it, I think it's a fine movie, but not a repeat movie. And that could be to its detrimental, like down the line. All right. Let's see here. Next up, I'm going to talk real briefly about the Phoenician Scheme, the new Wes Anderson film. And I've got one word for this thing: bloated. This thing is packed with a lot of characters, from a lot of like the Wes Anderson pulls, but also a lot of them don't need to be in here. Like there's a specific scene where Bryan Cranston and Tom Hanks are both in the scene. They both fill the exact same role, but they're both in the scene together against our hero, our protagonist, for Benicio del Toro, and both of them just feel like they do not to be in this scene together. They both feel like they're both trying to accomplish the same goal, but to have them both be in there feels like it's a bloated like waste of a scene. That well, Tom Hanks called up and wanted to be in the movie. I guess I could add him as a character in this scene next to Bryan Cranston, who's already in this scene. It's just a lot of this movie just feels like that. Like for some reason they had to go and find Scarlett Johansson. Didn't need to be. We just wanted to do it. She does nothing that helps like propel the plot a whole lot. And it's something that could be given to a different character or added to a different scene. Not for me to say that this is just Wes Anderson way up his own ass here, but I'm just gonna say Wes Anderson feels like he's way up his own ass here. He's got his own kind of style and uniqueness that he has in his writing, in the cinematography, even though it is technically a new cinematographer. But if you tell someone shoot it like a Wes Anderson film for Wes Anderson, you're gonna come out looking like a Wes Anderson film. So it feels like he's just doubling down on himself over and over and over again. It's a funky movie. I did like Michael Cera in this. First time I've liked him in something since Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So long time in there. I'm not really a huge Michael Cera fan, but I thought he played this character pretty good to my liking. Uh, he does have a turn, which I think does really good. I think it's a fun turn towards the end. Uh, and overall, like he's got like a fun shining spot in this. But halfway through the movie, I had to ask myself, okay, why are we doing this again? Why are we running through this? And if I have to stop and think, why is the plot moving forward? You lost me on the plot. You already lost me on the A story, especially because you're going to like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different people, different settings, just to meet these different characters. And I'm like, okay, why were we meeting this person again? Why were we? Because it sets up all in the beginning, but they're all in like different boxes, in shoe boxes, and it just kind of explains the plot, and then it does the plot. But as I was explaining the plot, I was like, okay, this is like too much, and I got to it. It's like, oh, this is just too much. There's a fun like behind the scenes director's commentary where talking about like adding too many contrivances. It was during the Russo brothers Infinity War commentary, where if they were making this up from like scratch, they would not do 6 contrivances of stones of the Infinity Stones because it's just too much to keep track of. Same thing here in the Phoenician Scheme. There's so many characters, so many places, so many names that you easily lose track of where you're going and what you're doing, and like it's more of like a, oh, there they are. That's that person. Oh, it's that actor. Oh, there's Bill Murray. Of course he's playing God. And it's like, yes, Wes Anderson keeps getting funding for all these movies, but at some point, I kind of want something new from him. I kind of want something different from him. I kind of want a Wes Anderson film that doesn't feel like a Wes Anderson film. And the fact that you can call it a Wes Anderson film, not just because it's directed by Wes Anderson, but parodied on him, is just so, I'll say it again, up his own ass on this. I You can watch it, you cannot, it might not be your best Wes Anderson film, it might be the one you should ever start with. It might be one you would want to end with either. It's a lot somewhere in the middle. It'd be like, yeah, I guess I could see where he was going. But again, too many characters thrown into this mess. All right. Feels like we're talking a lot here. So I'm going to wrap it up with the Fantastic Four First Steps. I saw this movie the week it came out, and then I missed a week talking about it, and then we did talk about it last week. But A lot of people have said a lot of good things about the Fantastic Four. A lot of people have come out of the theater gushing that it's a really good Fantastic Four. A lot of those same people also came out of Spider-Man No Way Home gushing how good it was. A lot of people came out of Spider-Man No Way Home saying, "Oh, it's the best Spider-Man in years." A lot of those same people probably did not watch Spider-Man uh, No Way Home, and they're home outside of a theater and realized, oh, maybe this isn't as good as I thought it was, and it's playing on the nostalgia factor. Fantastic Four doesn't really play on this nostalgia factor. It plays on the spectacle, and it plays on comic book accuracy. A lot of what's in this world is based off of or alludes to different comic book aspects within the Fantastic Four universe. So if you're not in the Fantastic Four universe and you're just a casual viewing fan, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the jokes, a lot of the references may go way over your head. There may be a lot of Easter eggs in here that people and fans just will not see, will not understand, will not get, and ultimately kind of lose a lot of that momentum in it. I will say, Matt Shackman, great director here. I love the direction on this. I love the art style of this. Everything in here feels unique. It feels interesting. Feels like it jumps from the comic books book page. The art direction, the set design, a lot of what's going on within the world feels, I'll say it, fantastic. It's the plot driven characters of the Fantastic Four that leaves me wanting more. They do a really quick run through on how they gain their powers. They kind of don't want to do the origin story. So they're already like established superheroes in this universe. Oh, yeah, a different world from the MCU, by the way. And they're like celebrities. They got cartoons. They're on lunchboxes. They make action figures. It feels like they're like right in the mid of their career, and they're more or less kind of done with everyday petty crime and are up to facing a galactic threat, mainly with Galactus. So it's interesting enough to keep me invested, to see where they're going, see how they pull this off. But one of my big things about this is I don't see myself coming back to watch it again. I love the world that they built. I just don't like the characters that help push the story. I think individually they're great. I think individually they kind of work well involving their character, but there's just something about the character interactions that do not mesh with driving the plot forward, especially when one of the big contrivances is having a baby in space, having that baby in space next to a black hole where time dilation is a thing. That's one of the things that really got to me in this movie is that Fantastic Four go up into space. They meet Galactus. They fight Galactus. They return to the world. And it feels like a day or two has passed. It doesn't feel like, oh, you guys have been gone for months or years. We didn't know if you guys were returning. That would have been a cool and interesting story. Like, oh my God, like they went out in space and they went through time dilation and now they're back, and the world that they left it in is not the same world that they returned. Yeah, not the same world they returned to. That would have been a much more interesting story. That would have been a fighting on two fronts of, well, we have to accept that the Fantastic Four are back. But really, it felt like they abandoned us because they left into space. It felt like they abandoned us and criminals ran wild and no one was there to stop them. So you have the people in the world, on the earth, turning against the Fantastic Four, while them also saying, like, we're here to help protect you, but also you may be squabbling amongst yourselves, but there's a bigger threat. The Galactus is coming. So we have bigger problems to worry about than what's going on right here. That could have thrown a lot more interesting dynamic of Fantastic Four within the world. That could have thrown a bit more dynamics in the characters who are connected to the Fantastic Four, because it feels like all we do in this movie is follow the Fantastic Four, which I know sounds a bit like, well, duh, it's called a Fantastic Four. for a reason. You're not here watching Jonah Jameson, the movie. You're watching Fantastic Four, the movie. Makes sense. Yes, I get that. But at some point, you need to involve other characters to help have an artistic feel against the Fantastic Four. If Galactus is meant to be your big antagonistic character, you need to show why he's big antagonistic character. They do a lot of tell and don't show. They say Galactus is a world eater. They show him eating one planet. They say the Silver Surfer is the Herald and is badass. But we see them do that one time. They say, "Oh, this is a giant threat. Like we don't know what we're going to do here." But uh, they solve it like the very next scene. There's very little forced plot driving from the antagonist's point of view. He's not even on the screen for a bulk of that time. He's there kind of at the end of the first act, and he's there in the third act. So you got the whole second act where it's all like preparation. It's all like worry. It's all like, how are we going to survive this? How are we going to do this? I feel like I needed an extra layer of dread because if they were like also kind of like fighting with, say, their image, like, oh, they're not like the infallible Fantastic Four that we thought they were. Like there is some human elements to it. Like they can be selfish at times. That could have been a better story. That could have added an extra layer to this. I felt like it was just missing that extra to make me care about what they're doing and why they're doing it. I can get why they kind of pulled back because it is, if you do all that, it does start to get a bit bloaty. But the one thing I did like was the mole, I won't call him the Underminer because that's what he's based off of from The Incredibles. But Paul Walter Hauser's character from the Subterranea. I did not care for his character. He appeared once in the beginning, then he appeared towards the end as like a answer to a question that they needed. But the entire time, as soon as I saw him, it was like, okay, you're gonna come back later, but also, why are you here? Because you're a big enough actor to where I know you're gonna come back later and have like actual scenes with these people, but it feels like there's a missing scene in there between the first appearance in the clip show and the final appearance that you see him towards the end where he's helping out. There seems to be something missing in between there to be like, oh, we do have established relations with the Fantastic Four and not just a verbal. I thought a lot what this movie does. It's got Trump packed so much into it that a lot of stuff is verbalized and not really shown. It's a fine movie. I think that it, for being like a world-ending galactic threat, it does kind of bring it not into that kind of extra space. I thought they were going to kind of try and tie this into the Eternals, but they didn't. I thought they would kind of try and tie this into the upcoming Avengers movie, but they didn't. Not really. I thought they'd kind of try to tie this to anything that Marvel's already done, but they didn't because they purposely said it on a different world. It's a different world, different universe, different Fantastic Four than what we're used to. So it's not something that I'm like really edging to like go back in and watch. Even when I walked out of the movie theater, I thought I had a better time watching Superman than I did watching Fantastic Four. I would rather go pay for another ticket to watch Superman than watch the Fantastic Four first steps again. That's how I felt coming out of the movie. So if that's my initial gut reaction, I could see myself getting better and better about Fantastic Four the more I thought about it. Because you can go from good, you go from great to good, but it's really hard to go from okay to good. It's hard to take that step up the more you think about it of a movie. And the more I thought about Fantastic Four, the more I thought, well, this feels wrong, and then this feels wrong, and then this kind of wrong. They could have done this better. It's like I don't want to be like editing it by myself or be like, oh, my head can't say this, I should have done this. And then we're running into the fanfic ground with everything. I don't want to go down that route. But at the same time, I think there's a lot more they could have done here with the movie to help build up the stakes, to help make it feel like the Fantastic Four are being fought on all sides, and that it's a much more of a threat than what came out of this movie. But, anyways, those are my hour-long rambling thoughts. Thank you so much for sticking with me as I went through all that I went through. It was so much. Oh my gosh. I promise I'll try not to do this in the future, but every now and then I just get so consumed up with me, especially when stuff ends consecutively all at the same time, that these kind of like half episodes, they tend to need to happen. Like I said, this is turned to an hour-long episode by itself. If we add this to their previous episode, that's how we end up with these 2 hour-long episodes. We don't want to do that as much as often, so that's why this is here. And of course, if Matt was here with me, he'd be asking a lot more questions, and this already hour-long episode would be even longer because we get into so many heated discussions, as most of you viewers and listeners are aware. So, with that, I will end it here. Thank you for listening to me. You can catch more of me on Twitch, where I stream video games every now and then, twitch.tv/mediaboat. Catch us in all your podcasting feeds, Apple TV, Apple TV, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. You can check out our archives on MediaBoatPodcast.com. Check out our YouTube to search MediaBoat Podcast. Check out our IMDb page, MediaBoat Podcast. So with that, we'll be next week with more news, more thoughts, more of us as we get towards our big 500th episode. Okay, bye.